Timbo Slice. Here we
Here I
are,
am.
Tuesday night. It's a little dark. I tell you, it's a little dark. You might notice it's a little dark behind me. I mean, we got some like
Days are getting
storm
shorter.
or something.
Yeah.
Days are getting shorter. Nights are getting longer. Isn't that some
Days
shitty
are
like?
getting and not so long. Yeah.
That's America, right? Ventura Highway, if I'm not mistaken.
But I don't know why
Where
you're
the
coming
days are
at America,
shorter,
by
the
the way.
nights
Why,
are long.
but yeah, but there was some disparagement in your tone
No.
that America just kind of
Not at
soft.
all.
I'm guessing probably too
Not
soft
at
for
all.
you.
I think that's Ventura Highway, Sister Golden Hair. I'm sure that You Can Do Magic, I think, is a America song. Those are
You
the
nailed
three.
it. I think they did a nice cover of Muskrat Love too. Actually, I think they wrote it. I don't think Captain and Tennille did.
Listen, I don't
We've
want to
talked about the captain before, so let's not go there.
And I'm sure we talked about Tony Tennille. By the way, that was her name, Tony Tennille, which, Tony with an I, not Tony with a Y. But yeah, so I'm watching things today, and I thought of you immediately because there are a lot of weird things going on in the crude oil market. You're the expert here. There's just I'm thinking to myself, in a world where people travel less, is crude oil, watch what I do here, is crude oil going the way of, watch this, the dinosaur. You see what I did? Fossil fuel dinosaur. I set
Genius.
you up there.
It's why we love to have these sessions, and why the world is following your every word here.
Okay. You talk about me being sarcastic.
Oh, sorry.
I mean, that was
no, but I like what you did there, and obviously, right away it makes me hungry for a Brontosaurus burger. Right away, it makes me think that I found Dino, by the way. A lot of people found him lovable and whatnot. I thought he was a pain in the ass. You're the guy with dogs. I mean, what would you do if Dino was in your house, almost eating you out of house and home? I mean, so
first of all, I think it's a lame name. I mean, they completely just mailed it in on the Dino character. But so we're talking about obviously the Flintstones.
Yeah.
And there's just so many ways to go. There's so many entendre things, but what I found, it's just, we talked about Jumping the Shark with Henry Winkler and Happy Days and how they introduced Chachi, and that's when it went off the rails. If you think about it, the Flintstone went off the rails when they introduced Gazoo in the final season. I mean, why?
No, it was Kazoo. Wasn't it Kazoo? Not Gazoo.
No, I think it was the Great Gazoo, Gazoo. I'll give you extra credit. I happen to know this. Who was the voiceover of Gazoo? Tim Seymour.
Dude, I mean, I thought his name was Kazoo. Is there any clue that would make
Yes, I will give you a clue. You ready? I'll give you a clue.
I have no idea. Yeah.
Carol Burnett Show.
Tim Conway.
See, I knew you would go there, which is why I went.
Harvey
Korman.
That feels good. Harvey Korman was everywhere in the 70s. His work in Blazing Saddles, and I know that movie's not allowed anymore, but that's Headley.
I mean, he was a genius. Anyway, he was the voice of, I don't know how we got here. Oh, I do know.
Kazoo. We're talking about the Flintstones. We're talking about the way of the dinosaur, and obviously you can't finish a conversation about the Flintstones without addressing Pebbles. There was an artist I think in the 80s who was called Pebbles, right? And she kind of went with the hair tied up in the stick, and wore something in a leopardy.
Well, yeah, and just to take this whole thing full circle, we call our son Boom Boom, which is a derivation of Bam Bam. Bam Bam used to walk around with his club, beating the shit out of things. So anyway, but now we're off the rails.
So oil had the shit beat out of it today, right? It was WTI was down almost 4%, broke through this 100-day. And now, as looks like it wants to test lower. It did this 2 weeks ago, and it held, and it actually rallied back, and we saw a lot of strength. But I think the big secular is a word I feel I overuse, but I'm using it again because there are a lot of these big themes. The sense that we knew that oil came into 2020 and even into 2019 and maybe even into 2018 and 17 was a supply issue, right? That unconventional and alternative energy fuels, the U.S. has a role in shale, and obviously the rest of the world putting technology meant that supply was in abundance. But the story really is about demand, and it's not just the obvious demand that PMIs and industrial data are down, but just like so many trends that were in place before COVID-19 that were punctuated by this event, and in hindsight, is, oh yeah, this is where we were going. This is where we were going on housing. This is where we were going on software. This is where we were going on work from home. This is where we were going on, DTC. Well, this is where we were going. I think ultimately, in terms of the demand factor, people aren't going to be driving to work and sitting in rush hour traffic, and they may not ever do it in the same way again. One of the reasons why the airlines are suffering is not so much the domestic travel, but the international demand is just not there. The business travel is just not there. So the way the dinosaur may really be appropriate here, and and were the honeymooners, were the Flintstones a takeoff on the honeymooners? I just need to.
I think that's an excellent question. I think it's got some honeymooner undertones. I think it has some I Love Lucy overtones.
I Love Lucy.
It's there's a lot of amalgam sort of built in there. And I think you're right. I think I'll add one more thing, and we're not political. We're not trying to be at all. But I also think maybe there's some thought that if Joe Biden were to win, what happens to the energy market? And I think as whatever in the polls, and I have no idea because the polls are all nonsense.
We're doing scenario analysis here. That's all we're doing.
There's the debate in a few hours. If he doesn't basically trip or drool on himself, I think a lot of people will say he acquitted himself well. So as he potentially gains momentum, I think that's a real negative for the crude oil market. And one other thing, you mentioned punctuate. As a drummer, the great drummers are able to punctuate in certain places in song. And I just mentioned that because on this past Friday was the 40th anniversary of the death of the great John Bonham, the greatest drummer in the history of rock and roll.
Yeah, and I could never even dream about punctuating like John Bonham did. But I do think you've got a case here where yes, there is policy towards alternative energy fuels and an administration change and possibly a blue wave would be very destructive for different parts of the oil complex. And maybe that's something else that's playing out here. This is again, scenario analysis. But look, Mr. Slate's calling and I gotta
really?
Get back to work. Yeah, I know you're going out with Rock Hudson tonight. So, why don't we just leave it there? I mean,
Mr. Slate, I'd say it. Well, he would, Fred worked in the quarry. Right? Does anybody work in a quarry anymore? Actually, there happens to be a quarry by me on 287 as you head north. It's on your left. It is a rock quarry. So those things do exist.
I mean, are people just, are they just tapping away with like a pitch, like a fork on
I think the technology is such where people no longer need chisels and sledgehammers and those types of things. But, it's not that far from it. And it's a very macho thing to do. Maybe if this whole commercial break doesn't work out, I build the guns up and go work in the quarry. Just saying.
By the way, Fred wore a sweet tank top. I'd like to see you in that next time we get on air.
See you later.
Later.